Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Harrison-Pless. Thanks for joining us. Coming up, tightening the noose around an Islamic State group stronghold. Amid a final face-off, Libyan government troops say they've recaptured the city of Sirte. Damning allegations. An internal UN probe accuses peacekeepers from Burundi and Gabon of committing sexual abuse in the Central African Republic. I'll have more details with our correspondent in just a few minutes. And Ghana counts down to Wednesday's presidential election, the country's struggling economy at the forefront of many voters' minds as they prepare to cast their ballots. Good to have you with us. Well, first up, another major blow to the Islamic State organisation. In Libya, government troops say they now have full control of the coastal city of Sirte, a former IS stronghold. However, conflicting reports say that military operations are still ongoing. Sirte was the Islamic State group's most important base outside of the Middle East, giving the militants access to more than 200 kilometres of Mediterranean coastline. Laurent Berstecker has the latest.
A decisive victory that could spell the end of a 7-month-long offensive.
We started the fight today in the early morning. Heavy artillery led the way and we made great progress. Now, our ground troops have begun sweeping and scouting the area behind the heavy artillery.
Operations to retake Sirte from the Islamic State group began in May and were met with fierce resistance from militants who relied on guerrilla tactics, using landmines and suicide attacks to defend their positions. Yet signs emerged in recent days that the jihadists were about to capitulate as dozens of civilians were seen fleeing the city. Libyan officials praised Monday's decisive push, but said that fighting and clearing operations were still ongoing in some neighborhoods.
We're not moving like we were before when our progress was measured in kilometers. Now we're talking meters. We were able to clear 6 or 7 houses ahead of us, so it's going well.
The Islamic State group seized Sirte in 2015, taking advantage of the chaos that followed the ousting of Libya's longtime ruler Muammar Gaddafi. Losing the city, the last one held by the organization in North Africa, is likely to be a major blow to the jihadist presence in the region. Yet analysts have warned that militants who managed to escape could join sleeper cells based in other Libyan cities, such as Benghazi and Tripoli.
More than 40 peacekeeping troops from Burundi and Gabon have been accused of committing sexual abuse in the Central African Republic. That's following an internal UN investigation. The probe alleges the abuse happened in 2014 and 2015. Now the pressure is on, with a United Nations spokesman calling on both Burundi and Gabon to take the case further. Well, for more on this, let's cross to our New York correspondent, Jessica Lemazurier. Jessica, a very good evening to you. What details have been revealed as a result of this investigation?
So we don't have that full OIOS report, but we do have information from it. We know that 139 potential victims were interviewed, that they were from Dekoa in Kimo province prefecture, and that some 41 suspects were identified. This was through sort of photo fit and testimonies from victims. Out of the victims, also 8 of them have claimed that they became pregnant from peacekeepers, and 6 of those were minors. Now, of course, the DNA tests have to be checked, and that will be by the troop contributing countries. And these investigations have to be carried out now by the countries implicated, Burundi and Gabon. There were 25 Burundians implicated in this and 16 Gabonese. So that will now go to those countries for further investigation. This all dates back to at least 1 or 2 years ago, these accusations. So it was very hard to investigate their veracity. There was no forensic evidence or physical evidence left. So this has been a very difficult investigation. But what it does show is that it's not a case of just a few bad apples. It seems that sex abuse in the Central African Republic carried out by peacekeepers was potentially systematic.
And what will happen to those who've been accused of committing these crimes? What's next for them?
So all of those peacekeepers who were implicated, who've been accused, have been repatriated already. And now it will be, the onus will be on the Burundian government and the Gabonese government to investigate whether or not these claims are true and to carry out these DNA tests or use the DNA to find out if these paternity claims are also true, and then punish their troops accordingly. The problem is that this is grossly flawed because it's not really, say, in the Burundian government's interest to find them guilty because then they will be penalised. Those soldiers will not be allowed to go and serve again. At the same time, there was a resolution passed earlier on this year which says that if this is not properly investigated by troop contributing countries, then the country's peacekeepers will be penalised, and indeed a whole contingent could then be repatriated. So there is some incentive, but at the same time it seems very hard to imagine that these investigations will be properly carried out when it's hard to see what the incentive is for the countries.
OK, Jessica, thanks very much for that. Jessica Le Mesurier reporting there from New York. Gambia's main opposition leader is a free man once again. The country's appeals court ruled that Ousseynou Dabo and 18 other members of his UDP party should be released on bail. The group were arrested in April for taking part in a protest which called for electoral reforms and later sentenced to 3 years behind bars. Well, Monday's ruling comes in the wake of last week's presidential election, a vote won by the opposition's Adama Barrow. His shock victory puts an end to incumbent leader Yahya Jammeh's 22-year grip on power. Public hospitals across Kenya were brought to a standstill as doctors there staged a mass walkout. They took to the streets of the capital, Nairobi, as they demanded better pay and better working conditions. Scuffles erupted when police used tear gas to break up the crowds. The strike left one psychiatric hospital woefully understaffed, allowing at least 100 mentally ill patients to escape. Kenyan authorities have since launched an operation to find them and return them to the hospital. South Africa's departure from the ICC is set to take effect next October, and it will be the first country to do so. Ghana is counting down to Wednesday's presidential election, with the incumbent John Dramani Mahama hoping to clinch a second term. But he's under fire from his political rivals over how his government has dealt with issues like the economy and corruption. Across the country, people are complaining about unemployment and the rising cost of living. Our correspondent Katerina Vatozzi reports.
He's the opposition candidate welcomed like a champion. Nana Akufo-Addo's run for president twice before and failed. This time around, he's promised to rebuild Ghana's economy.
The only way we can guarantee the future of Ghana is to remove John Dramani Mahama from power.
At this rally, there's no doubting Akufo-Addo's popularity. But the task before him looms large. The opposition can't match the resources of the incumbent president, John Dramani Mahama, but it says it can offer a change, which for many is a message that brings hope.
We had to do away with the number of our staff and also increase our prices.
Nicholas Manu makes domestic stoves. His business, like others nationwide, has suffered over the past few years. A 2014 crash in the local currency doubled the price of imported raw materials. Nationwide power cuts limited production.
We have lost a lot of business. Roughly about a quarter of our turnover, which is roughly about $80,000 to $90,000.
The government's blamed its economic problems on the global fall in commodity prices, but it's also had to defend itself against a charge of doing little to fight corruption. In 2015, more than a dozen High Court judges were sacked for taking bribes to change court outcomes. Campaigners say the guilty are rarely held to account.
Committees of inquiries are established, and then the reports are released so many years later, and there's nothing in such reports. The people are back at work and it's business as usual.
But President John Dramani Mahama remains a hugely popular figure. He's won around voters before with his down-to-earth demeanour. His party believe it's enough to win him 4 more years at Ghana's helm.
And finally, the festive season is in full swing, and many of us are scrambling to buy the perfect Christmas presents for our loved ones. Here in Paris last weekend, the African Christmas market gave shoppers plenty of ideas for stocking fillers. Ellen Gainsford went to take a look at all the goodies on offer.
This Christmas market has an African twist. From traditional headwear
Does it look good?
to ready-to-wear designer creations, Parisian shoppers are snapping up their presents for the festive season.
With events like this, we are trying to come together to represent African culture, which isn't showcased much elsewhere in France.
Many of the items on sale blend African and European influences. Like these natural skincare products, made in France, but created with vegetable oils and shea butter from Africa. And these colourful dresses, designed in Paris using fabrics from Burkina Faso and Ghana.
Our aim is to promote African fabrics like wax prints, basin fabric, wooden. We make clothes that are Afro-European. We use a mix of fabrics, like this dress here, a mix of African and European fabrics.
For the customers, it's a chance to discover new labels.
It shines a light on the designers here and different specialties from Africa and the Caribbean.
And there's an extra reason for shoppers to splash their cash. Profits from the market are going towards building a cultural centre in Cameroon.
Stay with us here on France 24. Live from Paris continues with Thomas Waterhouse.
Encore, presented by Olivia Salazar-Winspear.
How do artists and writers see the world? France 24's culture show takes you beyond the headlines to the crossroads where the arts meet the news and engage with what's happening in our lives today.
Encore, on France 24 and France24.com.